Hey sis, the 11th of November is Remembrance Day across Europe, or commonly referred to as Veterans Day in the USA. We bow our heads for those who did not return. We remember all the male contributions to the war and his story. The day has passed, but there's one demographic of war contributions that the world has forgot, and that's Black women. Their stories are not footnotes of this historical period of war or his story that should be placed behind male and mainly white male recognition. They are her story and make an incredible addition to the Encyclopedia of Black Women here on Notes on Black Women. The Black women mentioned from here on out are the forces that kept armies fed, letters delivered, hospitals running, secrets kept, and communities held together while the world burned. The US postal system and Charity Adams Early. The mail that carried a soldier's lifeline and news back home was a logistical miracle back then, compared to the development with mail systems around the world now. In 1945, it was a Black American woman who rescued mail from being backlogged or undelivered. In the US, Black women served in uniform and behind the scenes in monumental ways. One of the most remarkable units was the 6,888th Central Postal Directory, the all-Black, all-female team that was deployed overseas in World War II. Led by Charity Adams Early, the Black women arrived in the United Kingdom in February 1945. They faced millions of undelivered letters and packages. Their mission and motto at the time was "No mail, no morale." These women worked 7 days a week, they sorted tens of thousands of items per shift and helped boost the morale of US troops separated from home. Then we have Black women's hands at work with Phyllis's breakthrough. Now, Black women also served inside the medical field in hospitals where life and death was decided. Nursing pioneer Phyllis May Dailey became the first African American woman sworn into the US Navy Nurse Corps on the 8th of March 1945. She broke a barrier that stood even as she entered segregated service. Nurses like Phyllis opened doors for those who followed behind her and challenged military segregation in the field of medicine. Across battle zones and base hospitals, Black women's hands stitched wounds, held the dying, and saved lives even when they served in segregated wards or were paid less for the same skill than white women. Moving across the water then, we have France's Siren of Resistance, a Black woman's contribution. Josephine Baker, 1906 to 1975, was a St. Louis-born performer who rose from poverty and became one of the most celebrated entertainers in Paris at the time. But behind the feathers and the spotlight was a woman of extraordinary political courage. During World War II, Josephine used her fame as a cover to work for the French resistance, carrying secret messages in her sheet music, sheltering refugees, and gathering intelligence in diplomatic circles that would have been closed to anyone else. After the war, she became a civil rights voice, refusing to perform for segregated audiences in the United States. She was a global figure, dazzling, strategic, and committed to her causes. Her life reminds us that resistance can come wrapped in beauty, artistry, and bold defiance. Moving away from Europe, we have the women of the Caribbean islands forcing governments to open doors. So within the British Isles, where I'm from, Caribbean and Black British women were enlisted in auxiliary services. They repaired instruments and kept aircrafts flying. Lillian Bader, one of the early Black Caribbean recruits to the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, trained as an instrument repairer and broke expectations about race and technical skill inside Britain's wartime machine. Born on the 18th of February 1917 in Liverpool, UK, this Black woman's labour on airfields and in factories and on dispatch lines altered the social landscape and what was accepted at the time. From Lillian's involvement and her persistence as a Black woman contributing to the war, this made a necessary nudge for reluctant governments to accept Black women into roles previously closed to them. Moving away from the UK and the Caribbean, we have the African women's contribution. They increased demands for women's rights. So in Africa, the wars of the 20th century reshaped gender labour and became very liberating for black women due to their presence and assistance in the war. Women across West and East Africa were placed into support roles for colonial armies. These black women's roles included nursing, provision, labouring on military roads and in camps. They also organised, protested and used wartime networks to advance post-war political demands to benefit them as women. The experience of war broadened horizons for these women. When men returned, many women had acquired new skills and they had a taste for paid labour. This experience for the black women became tools of nationalist and feminist movements in the post-war era. This service did not erase their second-class status, of course. However, black women served amongst segregation, discrimination and disbelief, and this made a wave for change. They sorted mail while denied the same benefits as their white counterparts. They staffed hospitals where their competence was needed, but at the same time underestimated. The result was their service was the seed planted for later civil rights and gender justice gains for women. The places at the table and as part of the service that these black women won was only by proving how indispensable they and their skills were on a home front and also overseas. Why does all this matter to black women today? It's not just historical. These women's choices to serve, to organise, to hide messages in song, to demand fair wages, to repair instruments and sort letters, modelled survival and strategy. To you, as a black woman across the diaspora listening to this or reading this, and also to myself as a black woman also, these stories are part of your and my inheritance. Also, these black women and the contributions show and teach us something that has not seemed to change. Even now, in the 21st century, decades after these women participated in the war. And that is, when the world calls, black women will answer. It could be argued, if we look at history, that at times this has been to our detriment, not just with the outside world, but with the black community also, as there is an expectation that black women will also be around to save the day, in quotation marks, during times of chaos. On the other hand, if we look at history, answering calls for assistance has led to breakthroughs for us as women. One way to look at these women's contribution is like a model of survival, but also a strategy for better inclusion for black women. Of course, we can't forget their service did not erase the second-class status for black women, but it was a seed that was needed for our gains later on in history when it came to civil rights and gender justice. So, on Remembrance Day, or Veterans Day, even though it has passed, we are still in the month of November at the time of me writing and recording this. Moving forward, let us remember them. Remember her work in the war. Today, black women in war looks very different. As I write this, there is a war in Congo, which I wrote about recently in my essay, when beef between black men leads to rape and sexual assault for black women girls. And my second essay, is the crisis they created being overlooked? Now, if you're on YouTube, both those essays may flash up on the right-hand side in the corner as I'm speaking now, and the second one might appear now. If you're on Substack, then it will be linked in the direct article of this written essay, and I will also make sure that these essays are in the description box on YouTube. Black women and girls in this war in the 21st century are not being used to assist in war, but as a strategy to win a war by men. They are actually using SA and the R word as their new strategy in what has been called the R-word capital of the world, as Congo has recently been named. It was reported by InFocus in June 2025 that 67,000 women and girls were R-word victims of these men in just the first 4 months of 2025. Now, this 67,000 women who were victims, this was an increase since 2024 of about 38%. This statistic for the number of black women and girls being harmed is incredible, and it is increasing as I am recording this and as you are reading or listening to this. To help just 80 black women and girls caught up in this war that black men have orchestrated and are now using black women and girls and their bodies as part of their war strategy in quotation marks, I set up a fundraiser with Women for Women International. This is a not-for-profit charity assisting women in Congo. I decided to participate. Just 500 USDs is all that is needed to help 80 women and girls in the Congolese war. If you feel called to, give what you can, even if it's just €1, $1, £1, whatever, the lowest it is of your own currency. Every donation will help. I will put the link to this fundraiser in the description box if you are on YouTube, and if you are on Substack, you will find it directly written in this essay. Now, as a side note, I receive no money via this fundraiser, nothing at all. It goes straight to Women for Women International. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening in and making it this far. If you are still with me, do drop me a comment. Let me know if you think I have missed anyone, any black women who have contributed to any of the wars that have been going on, particularly the wars that we remember for Veterans Day and Remembrance Day, as we call it here in Europe. Thank you so much. If you are a person listening on YouTube and you enjoy this kind of content, then do consider subscribing. It would be great to meet you here again. If you are on Substack, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you too. I will catch you in the next one. Much love, the Black Woman Essayist.